Welcome to the Prototyping Show. We are prototyping engineers who work with customers and innovators across the globe to envision the art of the possible. We deliver groundbreaking solutions and services on the AWS cloud. With our guests, we explore the mechanisms that drive technology innovation, get hands-on with AWS technologies, and discuss the latest and most interesting developments in the world of AWS cloud. This is the Prototyping Show.
And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of the Prototyping Show. Today is Thursday, the 29th of September, 2012, and we are delighted to have you join us again today. My name is Mark Teistel, and joining me today, as always, the amazing Charles.
Hi, everyone. Very good to be back for our third episode of the Prototyping Show. How are you, Mark?
I am great, Charles. How have you been?
Very good also. Very busy, trying to help people, trying to create prototypes, meaningful prototypes, exciting prototypes, show what is the art of the possible with customers. So it has been a really good month, and I'm very happy to be back here.
Awesome. And you have been doing some traveling. I think last time you were in Vietnam. Where are you in the world today?
Yeah, the first episode I was in Vietnam, second in France. This episode today I'm based out of Manila in the Philippines. So I was having a lot of super interesting conversation about experimentation, about building innovation, and frankly, it's absolutely amazing to see what's happening in this incredible market. So they always say it's more fun in the Philippines, and you see that the mindset is really there, and the what is happening is absolutely breathtaking. So very, very cool to share with our colleagues and customers the art of prototyping here in the Philippines.
Yeah, that's
what
awesome.
About you? Where are you? Because we never know with your background, it could be everywhere.
Yeah, no, I'm still Melbourne, Australia. Finally, the weather is starting to pick up, so a little bit more energy and a little bit more bounce in the step. But the one thing that has really got me quite excited is the response that we had to last month's prototyping show. We've had just a really solid response. We worked through a whole bunch of different ways of using things like CDK and the PDK to accelerate experimentation and development. I just want to remind everybody that you can find that on that content on our website. We've put the URL up there. I encourage everybody to go and have a look at episode 1 and episode 2. We've also got a YouTube channel. So youtube.com. Just search up the Prototyping Show. You'll see some extra special demos there as well. So I just encourage everybody to go ahead, and I'll do the typical thing. Hey, Charles, we want everybody to like and subscribe.
Put a thumbs up.
Put the thumbs up, exactly.
Yeah. So our kids will believe we are super cool because we have a YouTube channel. There's people looking at us. Please help us.
Well, maybe your kids, might have probably just embarrassed by their dad. Nonetheless, today is something that I've been looking forward to for a long time. Do you want to kick us off with what we're covering today?
Yes, today is super cool. It's sometimes a domain that is very wrongly perceived. It is a complicated topic. It's about security and prototyping. Everyone at Amazon, we often say that security is job zero. It is so important, so fundamental, and again, people need to understand the tricks and tips on how to do. So we have it's going to be a very exciting topic. I mean, I'm excited, and I know that I'm going to learn a lot from the people who will share with us, from our guests. What about you, Mark?
Yeah, exactly. Look, security is something that's really close to my heart. And our guests today, I think, are going to really take us on a journey. And it's a really incredibly interesting space. When I think about what we do in prototyping, helping our engineers and our customers shift security left and helping them understand the benefits of driving that left-hand shift, getting tooling that enables that left-hand shift, talking about detective controls, preventative controls, and really driving security as what it should be, a first-class citizen in everything they do. So for me, I cannot wait. So why don't you introduce us to our guests?
Yes, as last month, we have some very, very special guests. We have one internal and one external. So that's the first. We have an external guest for episode 3. So we are very, very happy to have with us today. First, Ashish Rajan. Many of you actually may know Ashish because he's the host of the very famous and popular podcast on internet called the Cloud Security Podcast. So very famous. We are super honored to have you, Ashish, with us. Hi. Thank you very much for joining us. Sorry.
No, thank you for having me. I was going to say I'm really excited about this show as well, especially with all the Perth Melbourne conversation in the chat as well. So I'm super excited about this. Talking about security is my thing. So I'm looking forward to talking to both you, Charles, Mark, and our special other guests as well.
Exactly. What a good teaser. So our special other guest is the very famous Darran Boyd, who is our very own AWS security lead for APJ Prototyping, but also for our solutions. So Darran, thank you so much also for joining. We're super excited to have you. And I'm personally very excited to hear both Ashish and yourself sharing with us more about security and prototyping.
Thanks so much for having me here. I love talking about security anytime I can. So I'm glad to get a little bit of airtime with you guys.
Sounds good. Thursday evening, here we are.
Awesome. Shall we take it away? You all good, Charles? Let's do it. So, it's really great to be here. Earlier this week, Ashish, I caught an episode of yours actually on your podcast where you interviewed Jonathan Rao, who was actually an ex-Amazonian that I used to work together with on the Security Hub team. We did a few little bits together, and you guys were talking about sec data ops and all that kind of stuff. I'd really recommend anyone that's interested in that topic to check it out. Maybe we could throw that in the show notes. But it was through that episode actually that I learned that he is now a CISO. And I was thinking about today's discussion and thinking about what we're talking about, which is about security programs and security programs in prototypes. But I thought maybe to start, let's talk about security programs in general. And, given the fact that you've been a CISO before yourself, maybe thinking backwards and thinking about that, like, why do companies need security programs? And, why do they need to prioritize that over anything else? Do you want to give us some insights on that?
Sure. And first of all, I'm really looking forward to this conversation as well, just because I think security programs are quite underrated in general. And maybe also because a lot of conversations around programs for security happen at a business level rather than a technical level. So if you go to a conference, most conversations would travel around, hey, we should just they talk about how do we solve this AWS problem or do this amazing prototype thing. So from a security program perspective, as a business understands the need for it, but for businesses that are still doubtful, I think the reason you need that is helps you plan ahead for, say, things like if you have a move into cloud, or you think they're planning for compliance standards to be met in the cloud, or in general in your environment, or if you're looking to grow your team for security because you realize you lack capability within security, usually a CISO would write a security strategy document, and that usually is like a 3 to 5 year program. And as part of that program, you would have these sub-programs within it for, okay, so for this year, we're going to focus on cloud security program for context of this conversation, or we're going to focus on the application security program. So that's kind of like I guess you can flesh it out for each companies that you talk to, but that's kind of like the main reason why people should consider having a security program.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's so much more than just technology, right? Like there's so many aspects that one needs to think about when you're putting together a program. Oftentimes the technology is the thing that's most easy to grok, right? And the part that's most difficult to get our heads around is how do we prioritize? How do we set metrics? How do we know that we're getting better than we were the last time when we assessed our security? So that's often something that I see as a challenge that people are less comfortable with addressing.
Yes, I think the other one is also probably just knowing what your actual capability as a team is as well.
Yeah,
I don't know how many people even know like whether their teams can do the job or not.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, to talk about in terms of a security program in prototyping, I guess what's a little different about prototyping is that we're very focused on the delivery, right? We're not doing operations. So we do have the benefit of not having to think about that whole other long tail of operations. But there's a fairly rigorous security program that we take all of our prototyping through before it gets into the hands of our customers.
Oh, wait. So how do you manage a security program in a prototyping world, I guess?
Yeah, like I say, it's very much like it's a different space, right? Because what we're talking about is prototyping is really to demonstrate the art of the possible in a very short period of time, right? To be able to take something as something that somebody thinks is maybe this is possible, but they need a proof point. So it's very tightly scoped in terms of time. So basically what that means is a production quality outcome is not the priority, right? The priority is this idea viable and can we prove it in a unique way? So in that context, our security program needs to operate within those constraints of time that we have. So what we do is we set a number of foundations in place first and foremost. And the first one is around metrics, which you've probably found with security programs is really central. Like measuring yourself against something is super important. And our goal is quite simple, to be honest. Our goal is that every one of our prototypes goes through a security review before it's handed over to our customers. And these security reviews are designed to be highly contextual. And this security review is governed by a process that we've defined that is being catered for our use case, which what we call protosec or prototyping security, which was really setting the security expectations, or what like we like to call it, the security bar for what we deliver and hand over to customers. And when we do this security review, we see it as how can we augment a human with technology to make good human judgment? And what's really important is that it's a human making a decision of whether or not this prototype ships, right? We don't want to outsource that. There's too much context missing. There's too much risk judgment that is required. So we can't take that away and not have a human in the flow. But what we try and do is make that decision as easy as possible and as efficient as possible for that human by augmenting them with a whole bunch of technology that's doing like the undifferentiated heavy lifting for them.
Interesting. Wait, so to your point about scaling humans, then is there like a champions program, or what do you guys do for that?
Yeah. I mean, scaling humans is so important, right? Because if we think about security, traditionally some organizations will try and have their central security organization in the path of every single decision, which does give you secure outcomes, but it really impacts your velocity because you have more builders than you have security people almost always. We found that we needed to find a way to scale that. And unfortunately, we didn't have to look too far. We work within AWS where we have over 200 different service teams. They've got exactly the same challenge, right? And they've got the notion of a security guardians program, which we've adopted and modified for our use case, which is effectively finding people within the delivery teams, in this case, our prototyping teams across APJ, that are security leaning but not reporting into the security organization. And we set up a formal program that is owned by me within security to enable them to be able to own their own security and own their own outcomes, whilst I oversee the overall program. And really what this does is allows the teams to be autonomous to a large degree, and we're continually enabling them with skills like how to perform threat modeling and what are our baseline security controls that we expect to be in place for all prototypes before they leave. So yeah, like scaling humans is essential to be able to keep up that momentum. Otherwise, we'd be as slow as how fast I could do all the security reviews for all of the prototypes that we have. And we've got a lot of prototypes going on.
Wait, so for people who may be listening to this and going, oh man, Darren, you're on the money there. I would love to start something like this. What are some of the components for like a program like this?
Yeah. I mean, there's a good number of components, right? And the really first step is around identifying champions. And I kind of alluded to that earlier, where you need to find people within those delivery teams that are a little bit security leaning. And oftentimes, if you've got a highly centralized security team today, they would have a sense of like who's leading in that direction already because they're interacting with these individuals. And then it's about recruiting them and ramping them up with skills to get them started. And this is like an initial ramp up of like, what are the theoretical skills that they need to have in place in order to be functional? But that's only the beginning, because security is an ever evolving domain, as you know, and you can't just enable someone once. You need to have continual enablement, and that enablement needs to be owned by the central security team, right? It's not about saying security is your problem. It's about, yes, it's still my problem, but I'm going to enable you to make good security decisions at scale, and I'm going to continually do that with you over time. And that's about building a community. And we build a community, we foster a community, we do continual knowledge sharing, we do security reviews cross geos. So maybe we would have someone in Korea getting involved in something in India, and people learn different ways of the art of threat modeling. And I really do call it the art of threat modeling, because it's really not a science, to be honest with you, right? Like, I can give you a few steps, but threat modeling is an art, and you learn how different artists do it, and then you bring that home to your geo, and that really gets the ball rolling in terms of continual enablement.
Oh, interesting. Because I think my personal experience on this was really interesting as well, because I started my CISO role in a remote world, like COVID world. And it was really interesting to what you called out about the Security Champions program as well, for identifying people. And I guess communication was probably the one thing that I'll probably call out, is probably the most important thing that you can do in a remote world, with many organizations primarily having a remote first kind of strategy as well. But I think on the money with the feedback and stuff as well, man. So talking about threat modeling as well, how does this kind of pan out in the whole bigger prototyping world? Because I think we spoke about people, let's talk about the process as well.
Yeah, threat modeling is probably a term you're going to hear a lot out of my mouth a lot. It's something I love talking about, because if we think about what is threat modeling, we're really trying to figure out really early in the stack, as left as possible, what are the things that can go wrong with what we've built, and what are we going to do about it? And the earlier you figure them out, the lowest cost and effort it's going to be, right? Because we're going to make good decisions early and not have to do a bunch of rework. And so we do it within our team, as we do across AWS. And the way that we enable our guardians and champions to do so is through initially enablement. So we do have internal training, which is like a 3 to 4 hour self-service training, where you can learn the foundations of threat modeling, and how to apply it in the real world in some fictitious system that we have within this training. And actually, earlier this year at our security focus conference, Reinforce, our CISO, CJ Moses, announced we've externalized that training. So it's called Threat Modeling the Right Way for Builders. And you can find it, if you just Google AWS threat modeling, you're going to find probably a blog post I wrote that refers to that. And I was a co-author of that. So that's a way that we're trying to externalize that. But also, like I was saying, that threat modeling, we're doing cross-geo sharing as well, where other people are involved in threat modeling other people's work. And we're finding that to be like a super valuable way of being contextual about security stuff. You and I were talking just before we went live about CSPM, right? CSPM is great, right? CSPM is a really good tool of saying, like, here's some configurations that you may want to look at because they may not align with best practices, but they are inherently non-contextual, right? Like, they know nothing about what they're assessing, and they will throw you a lot of interesting things that you need to look at. But the real value is looking at security through the lens of with context. And that's the way we think about it within AWS, and that's the way that we think about it within the prototyping teams as well.
I think context is so important, man. I think I saw a video of yours which is in the show notes as well. I think so. I'm sure Mark would add that in. It was really interesting what you mentioned about the contextual side of approving services from AWS as well. Because I think I've been in the past where, we have AWS SageMaker and developers want to use it, and someone on my team would look at it and go like, put a blanket approval on it, and next thing you know, there's a new service comes out. Maybe the right way to use it is slightly different, but we never talk about it because, hey, it's blanket approval. So I love that video that you did about the whole contextual approval as well. So I'll definitely recommend people check that out.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing it up. I mean, it's something I'm quite passionate about. I think I feel for a lot of security teams because I think they're given that horrible challenge of like, hey, we want to use this new service within an organization. That could be AWS, that could be something else, and they get given this challenge of like, hey, assess all possible use cases of this thing to know whether or not it's appropriate. And knowing all possible use cases of a piece of technology is near on impossible, right? And when you're dealing with AWS, that thing that you're assessing is probably changing every couple of days, maybe not every day, but every couple of weeks. So the things that you're assessing is a moving goalpost. So yeah, we really do advocate for this notion of being highly contextual about figuring out if something is appropriate from a security perspective or not.
Yeah, I think funny enough, not the favorite time of the year is AWS reInvent, even though it's coming up because the new services come up and then suddenly there's a backlog for security teams. You're like, oh my god, another service. It's a good thing there's a new service, but I'm like, oh my god, so much work to kind of come in. So
well,
I think
the real interesting bit is what we call pre-invent. So if you look at
there's a
all the
pre-invent.
well, it's all those announcements that we don't talk about so much, but they're public, but they're leading up to, they're basically the dependency stack to release the proper thing. And
Oh, right.
the amount of stuff that we announce quietly, I guess without a lot of fanfare, there's a lot of interesting stuff that comes up leading up to reInvent. So keep your eyes out on the public feeds for that as well.
Oh, wow. All the security people thanking you right now.
Or hating me, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Oh, well, maybe we actually gone on a really good flow now. We kind of spoke about people, process. We're missing technology over here. What's on the tooling side for this on the prototyping space?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, as much as we love recruiting more people through our Guardians program, our Champions program, like our goal is that we can keep ratcheting up our security bar by making the effort less, right? And we're technologists. We love to talk about how technology can take heavy lifting away. So, and this is an area of continual focus for us. In fact, we gather a bunch of data. Just very recently with the teams, we were doing some surveys around where are people spending the most time on security on an end-to-end prototyping engagement. And that data gathering is still ongoing, so we haven't got a conclusion yet. But that's going to directly influence what automation and process improvement investments we make next year. Right. So Amazon is a highly data-driven organization, and that's just one example of we want to make sure that we're not thinking we're solving the right problem. We want to know through data that we're solving the right problem. So, for example, one of the ways we do it is, every prototype.
Hey, Darren, can I ask a question before you go on?
Yes.
How do we get that data? Like, what are the mechanisms that we use to get that data so we can deeply understand what those needs are?
Well, it's quite rudimentary, really. I mean, if you talk about like the way that we collect it is through surveys, right? But it's what I've found through it. It's not so much the technology or the approach of asking the question. It's about how do you know you're asking the right questions, and that's where we spend a lot of time between ourselves and our center of excellence within prototyping. Was devising what are the right questions that's going to give us the data that we want, which had us lean on yet another Amazon approach, which is working backwards. Right? We worked backwards from what would we like the data structure to be like at the end in order for us to inform our investment decisions. And we worked backwards from that to figure out what are the questions we need to ask. But the way that was delivered was a boring old survey, right? Nothing special there. And a whole lot of follow-up, right? People don't love surveys all the time. So sometimes we have to ask people a few times to answer the survey. So that's the approach that we've taken so far.
How does this help people build securely, though? To your point about collecting data, now you have information to improve processes. How is that going to help the central teams, like to your point, center of excellence teams, build more securely and hopefully easily as well?
Yeah, so it's really about like we have no shortage of ideas of how we could automate, the hell out of things. It's about how do we automate the things that are going to get the most value. So already in our back pocket, we have a good number of initiatives that are aligned to each of these questions. What it's going to inform us is which of the one do we pull the trigger on? Which one are we going to prioritize and invest in first? So these could be things like the PDK, right? So we spoke about that in episode 2, I think it was, Mark. Building at speed, I think it was maybe called, where we have useful CDK construct and progen templates that we're going to be baking in more of the security invariance, as we call it, into the components that people use. So that's one example. Another example could be a part of a prototype is delivering a diagram. Is maybe we could automate the creation of the diagram from a synthesized CloudFormation template, or it could be increasing our coverage within our code scans aligned to our security bar. We have a good number of areas. So today, like the most visible one, I think, is PDK is a really good example. It's available, it's open source, and a lot of our security defaults are baked in there. So a lot of the lessons that we're learning, I guess, within prototyping are being externalized for everyone else through open source.
So people can use this today? Like, as in,
Yep.
they can find it? Oh, wow.
Yeah, so have a look at episode 2 in the show notes. That's where the PDK is covered, and it's open source and it's evolving. Right, we're not done. Something I love to say is, you can never say that you're secure. You can only hope and work towards being more secure than you were yesterday. So like we're continuously ratcheting up and iterating on all of our automation and capabilities, and the PDK will continue to be one of those that evolves.
Awesome. Well, sounds like we should summarize, because there's a lot of information there. We should probably summarize for all the skeleton parts people should think about for a security program in prototyping.
Yeah, I mean, if we think about prototyping end to end, the way that we think about it is, first and foremost, is setting those foundations, making sure that you're scaling your humans, make sure you've got a defined security bar. And then it's about having a good, solid security review process that is augmented by technology for the human to make the decision. We feel very strongly that a human should continue to make decisions. And I think we're probably don't have enough time. I was going to talk through a few of the steps that we go through our end-to-end process, but probably we could maybe hold that for another episode. So I was interested to kind of put it out there to the audience. Like, we've covered a lot of breadths today in terms of what a security program could be, some of the things we do within prototyping. Are there any areas that you would like us to go deeper on, and maybe dedicate a more deep dive slot within a future episode? So I'm sure Mark will put up a banner about our mailing list, the prototyping show at amazon.com. Do let us know, like, what kind of security topics would you like us to go a little bit deeper on in the future?
Yeah, sounds like there's a lot of conversation on the chat as well. So I think I'm pretty sure people will come back to it. But I think definitely required, I would say, security program, prototyping. So thanks for sharing that, man. I think Mark, I'm sure, will come on board in a second as well, and we can take it from there. Oh, Charles, wow, the whole gang is here.
Yeah, guys, it was absolutely fantastic. I didn't want to interrupt because I was taking notes obviously on security, but also on yeah, it was really, really interesting. Thanks for sharing, guys. I think we are. It's such a wide topic that we should do at some point another prototyping show to go deeper into a specific dimension of it, because it's fantastic. I think it's really, really cool.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of feedback in the comments around wanting to see things like implementation examples. What tools do we use? So I tell you what, why don't we take all of this feedback, park it, and we'll come back and we'll do another session maybe on some of the more nitty gritty detail of the implementation around what good looks like from a security perspective. But that was really insightful, guys. And before we say thank you, I do want to ask the audience out there to give me a score between 1 and 10 for Ashish's beard, because I just think it's gorgeous.
Yeah, I feel so ashamed.
Well, I'm not gonna put my beard to this judgment, but there's like 11 score. Oh my god.
11. Wow.
Oh, wait, I can't believe someone gave me a 9. Come on, man. Or maybe it was out of 9 out of 9. I appreciate that.
So we know you're on a tight timeline. Ashish, it's been a real pleasure and a privilege having you on the prototyping show. Hopefully we get to come and spend some time with you on the security podcast, and you're always welcome back to have a conversation with us. So just a huge thank you from us and the audience.
I appreciate that, and thank you everyone for having me. And I really enjoyed the conversation. Looking forward to the next one as well, and hopefully one on Cloud Security podcast as well. All right, talk to you guys soon.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Ashish. Cheers.
And Darren, any final words before we wrap up?
No, I think I've said my closing line, which is my favorite, is that you can never be secure. You can only be more secure than you were yesterday. Remember that, people. Security is an iteration. It's not an end game. Just got to keep going at it, and we'll keep ahead.
So if I summarize, Darren, quickly, so to create a program, the notes I took is the components of a program, a successful program would be first to start by identifying a champion, ramping that champions up, obviously to create a continuous enablement tools or mechanism, and then building a community around this champion, around knowledge sharing, in our context, cross-region cooperation and so on, in order to really learn the art of threat modeling. Is there anything I missed in that?
Yeah, I would say maybe just the first thing is around metrics, right? Like knowing whether or not you're getting better or not, and where you are is really important, right? Being able to demonstrate value, being able to know and motivate people to know that the experiments that we're doing are on the right track, right? A lot of the time we gather data to inform our experiments. Sometimes we lean on our judgment. Either way, we need to be able to measure whether or not those things are actually proving to be successful. So that's where you come back to good metrics.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. That's really awesome. And the last thing, sorry, just before, there's one more thing I really enjoy also hearing is that at the end of the day, we're talking a lot about AI, about automation and so on. But at the end, as you mentioned, it is a human decision to be made. And we are just trying to find tools in order to make the decision as easy as possible and basically scaling human capabilities. And I think that fundamental, the human element is still very important. I think so. I really enjoy that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes people get like kind of spooked about, oh, the AI is going to take my job. AI humans train AI. So like at the end of the day, it's our intellect, right? And that's our intellect that's being brought down to what is that lowest common denominator that's useful, that allows us to work on the higher order problems that are more intellectually stimulating. So I actually find it really useful that it means that as a security practitioner, I'm not digging around trying to figure out if an S3 bucket is public. Technology can tell me that. But whether or not input sanitization is required for a cross-site scripting vulnerability, maybe I can use my brain for that instead. So I find it really cool.
Well, and I think that the word of the end. Sorry.
If I'm coding anything, you need as much security as you can, right?
Well, I've got an alert for that. Anything that's got your alias on it that gets committed, that immediately is a Sev2 ticket. So we watch out for you, Mark.
I've heard that. I try to avoid committing code, but hey.
I've seen the tense comment on the chat, which is hilarious. I find that I hope AI can take my job. Actually, I'm okay with it.
As long as you still get a paycheck, right?
Yeah, the paycheck is not shared.
So there is a really good question here, Darren. For prototyping, you mentioned it would be different to production in terms of security overviews. How does it differ, and what are the things that you focus on?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we really focus on is likelihood. All right, like if we think about the code that we're writing, we've got top class engineers writing code, but at the end of the day, that code is not going through the degree of scrutiny, like of full pen testing and the kind of things that you would associate with a production system, right? That's not what it's designed to do expressly, because we're trying to deliver a proof point. So then our question becomes, well, what is the lifetime of this code and its exposure? And the thing that we worried about, number one, is about automated discovery and exploitation, right? Like a non-targeted attack is the most likely scenario for pretty much anyone, right? For any of those that have put a server, a Linux box on the internet and exposed SSH or your Windows box with RDP and had a look at your logs, you would have got a brute force attack between 3 seconds and a minute. You would have been brute force. Like automated attacks are by far the highest order problem when we're dealing with these things. So what we really like to do is carefully craft the attack surface to minimize that as much as possible, and make sure that as little, if not no, custom code that we've written is directly exposed to unauthenticated input. That is our number one concern, because we recognize that the code that we're writing is not going to go through all of the due diligence that we would want to for a production level system. So it's about attack surface reduction for non-targeted attacks is our number one priority. Now, that's not to say we don't consider other issues. I'm saying that's our number one priority. And we do need to focus our time, right? All of us have finite time. We need to be using our human intellect on the things that are going to be the most valuable. So we're very, very particular about prioritizing the threats and the likelihoods that are going to be the most valuable in our context. And I think that principle is valuable regardless of if you're doing prototyping or not, is making sure that the threat modeling that you're doing is contextually relevant to the things that are most impactful and the most likely for your scenario.
Yeah, great answer. Very complete answer. So hopefully that answers the question, Valduris. All right, Darren, we're going to say goodnight, and just a big thank you for joining us today. It was really insightful, really interesting. We'll definitely have you back to cover off some of those more mechanical, deep technical things. And hey, how about we do some demos, and geek out for a little bit as well.
Security demos, let's do it.
Yeah, sounds good. Darren, have a great time. Stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thanks, gentlemen. Thank you, everyone. Yes. Bye-bye.
That was super cool.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Cool. How to make security interesting.
I don't know how they do it. It's incredibly important. And as Darren said, it is job zero at AWS. And it should be the first thing we do when we wake up, and should be the last thing on our minds when we go to bed. But it is an area of depth and speciality that is remarkable. And clearly Darren and Ashish have raised the bar today in their knowledge. So I found that amazing.
I find that when you listen to them, you understand that there is always expectation, and sometimes your expectation actually disproportionate versus what you can really do actually, because we are also influenced with movies and so on. And actually the first step is very often much easier than we expect. So yeah, I did enjoy it very, very much.
Yeah. The one thing that I really took away, other than just sort of the general interest, was the fact that you don't have to start with a big, heavy process. You can just start by asking your engineers, your developers, what's blocking them and what do they think are the most important things to focus on, and how can you help them accelerate the security work that they do. Use that as an input and be very, very targeted in your execution, and really just take it step by step, and to keep that context, that bounded context, wrapped around everything. So I think it's really encouraging to hear that customers and developers just don't need these big, heavy, mechanized processes that we've seen maybe traditionally in the past.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Definitely. And the iterative approach, actually, we're talking about prototyping, we're talking about experiment. Actually, everything is built about iterations. You cannot have the perfect answer straight away. You cannot have the perfect solution. It's always about trying and sometimes failing. So it's about minimizing the surface of failures, but it is about that iterative process. So that's we have a common theme here across what we are doing versus security, and how both are as important and combined also.
Absolutely. Well, Charles, you know what time it is, don't you?
I think I kind of know. Yes, it is the Code Commit Challenge time. Sorry, I'm trying to create at the same time a jingle, but my imagination was not there really. I'll have a keyboard next time, maybe with Deep Racer, Deep Composer. Actually, maybe we should try to create something, a little jingle automatically generated by AWS music generation tool. That would be interesting to see.
That would be. So, Charles, this is your Code Commit Challenge this week. This is one that you've seen in code. Now, as Darren said, every time anybody sees a commit from me in code, they back away in horror and fear. So talk me through this Code Commit Challenge.
So I was going across a lot of rankings of the best code commit and so on, and I was laughing, but a lot were not very prone to talk, to share publicly. So it was more a lot, kind of, forgive my French, pardon my French, kind of scenario. And then I fell on that one. I found that one, and I thought it was hilarious actually, because how you when you have been spending your whole day about struggling on fixing a problem that potentially you haven't created, but someone else has created, but you're trying to find a way to fix it at the end of the day, and you're there, oh come on, I just need to commit it and that's it. It's kind of similar scenario, like if my daughter, which is 4 years old, asking me, how do you do babies? And I'm like, you know what? I don't have the energy. I'll explain to you when you're older. So it just makes me laugh actually, because there is a part of like, yeah, I've very much compared. Yeah, you don't want to enter those super technical details about reproduction. You just want to, yeah, trust me on that. One day you'll understand.
So what really interested me, and I've picked up my pen, that's a really bad habit. What really interested me when you shot this one across as an example was, I think it's got two kind of sides to it. I think certainly that element that you were talking to there around, hey, look, just don't worry about it now. It'll be fine. We'll go through it later. But I think there's a really potentially risky flip side to that, right? Like if you are committing code, especially if it's production code. Now we don't do that in prototyping, but if you're committing code and it's either complicated enough, not well documented enough, or you can't write a commit message that is meaningful enough, you'd have to question whether that code should actually be there, because you may not be working on that project, you may not be in that business anymore in the future. And you have to have this sort of chronological append log of what's been going on in the code base. So I think, it's got a really funny side to it, completely agree. But I think it's also got this really risky side, right? So if I was to see this, I would have a chuckle, but then I would probably reject the PR or the CR, right? And say, look, no, we just can't do that. It needs to be clear enough and verbose enough that others can understand it easily and cleanly.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But in all fairness, we are looking for those ones too for this show. So
I know. But it's always me who brings down the mood here, right?
No. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I was reading a book called The Founders, fantastic book about the basically the birth of some of the most prominent startups, and I will let you find which startups they are talking about. And it's just fantastic actually to see where we are where we were, I mean, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and where we are today. And it's absolutely incredible in terms of, you had the intern joining a company and he could do whatever he wants, access all the source, access all the databases, versus something today that is very obviously structured, process oriented, and bulletproof, so to speak. I mean, most of if you follow the best practices, and so that part also is like going from this old school to more reliable, more secure, and so on. It's incredible to see also where all the progress that have been done. So yeah, that's why it reminds me a lot of good and bad memories.
So we've got a great comment here. Nope, I assume that's HR office should be able to read it and know what's going on per se. So I think this is back, comment back to the code commit challenge. Look, I completely agree. As I said, it's got a funny side to it, but there is always a serious side to the work that not just we do, but everybody that's joined us today does. And building longevity and robustness into not just the code, but also all of the development, the DevOps mechanisms that go around it. Good, strong, verbose, and clear commit messages, CR notes, testing notes. All of those things are just incredibly important. And we've got the same comment here: never enough documentation, and that's really interesting and timely. One of the things that we're looking at, certainly in prototyping, and Darren alluded to it just before, is can we have some pre-built constructs and capabilities that developers can just consume, and they get all of this capability for free. And we gave a great demo of that last week in terms of PDK. And again, I encourage everybody to go to the website and have a look. But things like documentation as code. So, the documentation lives with the code, is rendered at your build time, might live somewhere else ultimately in deployment, but having that documentation being an intricate and intimate part of what you're building is incredibly important. So at least if you do get a crazy code commit message, you can go to the documentation and have a look.
Do you imagine if you are generating a documentation with all the teams like the guy who just wrote that message? That would be hilarious, but not very meaningful. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And, that would be, at least to my mind, a failure. So I would love to have a look at this week's We Failed so you don't have to. So let's jump across to this. And Charles, this is a great story that you're going to share. So, I'm going to put you front and center and let you share your story.
I'm always talking about failures. It's a very it's a psychological thing at the end. I should even have a sofa instead of a seat, actually, to talk about my previous experiences. No, I mean, we talked a lot about the technology and many aspects of we fail so you don't have to. But I think there's another element. It's really about really knowing your audience. Why? Because we had some incredible, tech and the way techs think, and we can have a piece of an element of technology that we find it so cool. We spend time on it. It's complex. It solves really a core problem, but you can create whatever a presentation, show the results, show accuracy, if it's a machine learning model and so on, and be excited. If you don't know your audience and you're not able to share those results, that can be a disaster. And I have been in some cases where we were so excited, but really with our tech hat, showing result of a model and so on, and having an audience in front of us when we were doing the demo. The full audience was, I'm sorry, there's an airplane landing next to me, it's super loud. Having the audience actually not being able to connect because they were all business people. So being able to prepare a demonstration or sharing session or whatever, to target it to your audience where you don't care about if you're talking about machine learning, what is accuracy, what is the area under the curve. Maybe that's not important. What is important is how much dollars they will save or things like that. Being able to abstract your what you have done in order to give them after the right flavors, business flavor or marketing flavor or whatever, I think it's fundamental skills. Missing that, and people just look at you like if you were the alien and like, what is this guy talking about? And you have
I get that all the time. It doesn't matter. I get that all the time.
That's the accent. Sorry, it's a different problem. But yeah. but yes, I think it's absolutely fundamental. Behind the technology, how you are able to tell story eventually. But again, reconnect to your audience and bring the right message. I was in a series of meetings 2 weeks ago, and we're talking about storytelling and what is the shape of a story, going from the environment, the customer problem, someone's problems, how different element comes and affect the problems until you go to you're reaching the peak of the problems, which is the challenge if they're not able to fix the problem, for example, or address the issue. And then how are you going to provide them a solution? And I think, again, we have tools now to connect with different people and so on. And that's why I was bringing this challenge as less technical, but still fundamental. I do believe in the way we are sharing our success. We are sharing our moment of happiness or moment of pride, actually, sometimes, in order to not feel like no one understands how beautiful the thing that you've done is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's. I think you were talking there about storytelling, and I think the approach you were talking about there was I think it's called the hero's journey.
Exactly. Yes.
And I think what we quite often see in technical people is this inability or forgetting to ask themselves the question or a couple of questions. What does my audience care about? What do I want my audience to leave the room knowing? And what's the appropriate way to deliver that message to them? And then to use storytelling as the mechanism to get there. So, in the prototyping process, as you know, we do stakeholder debriefs. And part of that, we focus very heavily on.
That's why I'm here in the Philippines, actually. So, yeah, I know well.
Who's going to be in the room and what do they care about? We really need to ask ourselves these questions, because it doesn't matter how great technology is. If you're not landing the right message with the right intent at the right level with the right language, doesn't matter how good the tech is, right? You'll
So
miss that
what?
opportunity. Exactly. So what? And you guys hear me say that all the time, right? When we do writing, I always, if a sentence or a message is not clear, ask yourself, so what? Why am I saying this? And if I say it, so what? So it's a super interesting area, one that I'm very passionate about. And we do fail.
Frustrating, by the way. It can be frustrating because we are obviously, as tech people, we are sometimes getting excited for some elements that people totally miss the complexity or the beauty sometimes of it, and it is frustrating because you need to get something like a little bit at the high level, which is a little bit less exciting. You don't really talk about competitive advantage. But it is important.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was awesome, Charles. Thank you. I just encourage the audience to mail in and let us know if you have some disastrous code commits that you want to share with us. We'd love to hear the story, the prototyping show at amazon.com. And, it's been really encouraging tonight just to see the breadth of people joining us. We've had Korea, Perth, Sydney, Melbourne, Myanmar, from all over the place. So it's really great to see the message about the prototyping show getting out there. Of course, at AWS, we run a whole range of live streams. I encourage everybody to check out the Twitch schedule, Twitch TV, twitch.tv/AWS. Have a look at the other shows that are going on. I encourage everybody there. And I think we got Kansas City coming through as well. Wow, that's fantastic.
That must be early, though.
Yeah, very early, I would say.
That must be super early.
So thank you for joining us. It's a privilege to have you. We look forward to seeing you again. What do we got here? We've got New Zealand, known as the Better Australia. Okay, I've got to share that one because that's fantastic. I have to say, we've been doing increasingly more and more work in New Zealand. The tech space down there is absolutely hot. The innovation is outstanding. And if you just, specifically New Zealand, have a look at some of the incredible companies that have, come out of New Zealand recently, not just in the cloud space, but animation companies, the movie, the media and entertainment segment as well. So great to have New Zealand with us. So back onto track. So again, I just encourage everybody to have a look at the AWS Twitch channel, whole range of shows. We would love to see you again next month. We'll be getting a post out. If you would love to share with us how we can better reach you, content that you would like to see, topics that you'd like to see us cover, again, please reach out to us. This is for you. And the better we can align to your needs and give you the input that you need, the better this show will be. So, Charles, we're getting to time. I'm going to say thank you. I'll just hand it over to you to wrap up for today.
To wrap up, oh, wow. Okay, sure. No, I agree. I mean, first, thank you so much from our audience. Actually, it's super cool to see you engage. But yeah, we want to know from you what you want to hear. We have ideas. We have a big pipeline of ideas, actually. But is it something that is relevant for you? Is it something we should deprioritize and prioritize something that you really want to? You may have a challenge with. We're up here. We're up for that. We're up for a challenge, actually. Even ask us technological topic that we don't even know about or something. Don't hesitate. Challenge us. We're here for that. It's all prototype. We always say customers that we are here to help them really address challenges that they don't necessarily believe we can solve easily, or we can solve actually. And to test our capability, to test the way we believe on our technology and our services. So please do the same regarding the content of the show. If we don't know, we would find the right person and so on. So we want to make it interactive. We want to make it engaging and most importantly, meaningful. So I think that's my key message. We are super excited. We have a pipeline of subject. We have a few people in the different teams that we also want to share with you some of the things they have built. So we want to have more hands-on a demonstration and so on. But again, we want to prioritize based on what people want and need. So please, guys, just reach out to us. SageMaker, Canvas, prototyping a prediction model would be a cool session to see. Got you on that. We have something super cool. I'm sorry, Mark, I'm taking the... We have something super cool we can share, something we're going to open source very soon about building all automated pipeline that you can plug to Canvas, also other elements. So we can try to work around that. Definitely. Careful what you ask for. Yes, I know. Please be decent, people. But no, that's my message. We're super excited. We wanted to. We started that show a little bit out of passion, and completely out of passion, most likely, actually. And it's interesting to see where we're going to. I think we have to learn. I've seen how Ashish also is great at, the engagement with Darran was super cool. So we are learning also, but yeah, we're very excited.
Awesome. I just had a look in my calendar, the 27th of October, we are back with everybody, 7 p.m. AEST. You'll see us advertise and share through all the normal channels. So I hope everybody will join us in October. For those of you in the warmer countries down in the Southern Hemisphere, summer is on the way. Sit tight, it's coming. Look forward to spending time with everybody over summer. And, next month, Charles, I hope you're at home and that you're off the road and enjoying time with
my wife too. Hope so.
I don't know. Are you sure? All right, everybody. With that,
that's horrible. That's horrible. Last comment. Can we find something to end the show, please?
We'll edit it out. We'll edit it out. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe, and we will see you all next month.
See you very soon. Thank you so much, Mark. Great to have you also and speak with you today. Cheers, everyone.
Welcome to the Prototyping Show. We are prototyping engineers who work with customers and innovators across the globe to envision the art of the possible. We deliver groundbreaking solutions and services on the AWS cloud. With our guests, we explore the mechanisms that drive technology innovation, get hands-on with AWS technologies, and discuss the latest and most interesting developments in the world of AWS cloud.